Dante's Divine Comedy, Inferno, Canto 22. I have erewhile seen horsemen moving camp, begin the storming, and their muster make, and sometimes starting off for their escape. Vaunt couriers have I seen upon your land. O Arentines and foragers go forth, tournaments stricken, and the joustings run, sometimes with trumpets and sometimes with bells, with kettle drums and signals of the castles, and with our own, and with outlandish things, but never yet with bagpipes so uncouth did I see horsemen move, nor infantry, nor ship by any sign of land or star. We went upon our way with the 10 demons, savage company, but in the church with saints, and in the tavern with the gluttons. Ever upon the pitch was my intent to see the whole condition of that Bolgia, and of the people who therein were burned. Even as the dolphins, when they make a sign to mariners by arching of the back, that they should counsel take to save their vessel. Thus sometimes, to alleviate his pain, one of the sinners would display his back, and in less time conceal it than it lightens. As on the brink of water in a ditch, the frogs stand only with their muzzles out, so that they hide their feet and other bulk. So upon every side the sinners stood. But ever as Barbaricia near them came, thus underneath the boiling they withdrew. I saw, and still my heart doth shudder at it, one waiting thus, even as it comes to pass one frog remains, and down another dives, and Graphia Khan, who most confronted him, grappled him by his tresses and smeared with pitch, and drew him up so that he seemed an otter. I knew before the names of all of them, so had I noted them when they were chosen, and when they were called each other, listened how. O Rubicante, see that thou do lay thy claws upon him, so that thou mayest flay him, cried all together the accursed ones. And I, my master, see to it, if thou canst, that thou mayest know who is the luckless wight. Thus come into his adversary's hands. Near to the side of him my leader drew, asked of him whence he was, and he replied, I in the kingdom of Navarre was born. My mother placed me a servant to a lord, for she had borne me to a ribald knave, destroyer of himself and of his things. Then I domestic was of good King Tybalt, and sent me there to practice barratry, for which I pay the reckoning in this heat. And Siriato, from whose mouth projected on either side a tusk as in a boar, caused him to feel how one of them could rip. Among malicious cats the mouse had come, but Barbaricia clasped him in his arms, and said, Stand ye aside, while I enfork him. And to my master he turned round his face. Ask him again, he said, if more thou wish to know from him, before some one destroy him. The guide, Now tell then of the other culprits. Knowest thou any one who is elation under the pitch? And he, I separated lately from one who was a neighbor to it. Would that I still were covered up with him, for neither claw nor grapnel should I fear. And Libicoccio, we have borne too much. And with his grappling iron seized his arm, so that, by rending, he tore off a tendon. Ecce Dragisnazo wished to pounce upon him, down at the legs, whence their decurion turned round and round about with evil look. When they somewhat were pacified again, of him who still was looking at his wound, demanded my conductor without stay, Who was that one from whom a luckless parting thou sayest that thou hast made, to come ashore? And he replied, It was the friar Gomita, he of Galura, vessel of all fraud, who had the enemies of his lord in hand, and dealt so with them each exults thereat. Money he took, and let them smoothly off, as he says, and in other offices a bearer was he. Not mean, but sovereign. 4 gathers with him, one with Don Michael Zanche, of Lagordo, and of Sardinia. To gossip never do their tongues feel tired. O me, see that one, how he grinds his teeth. Still farther would I speak, but I am afraid lest he to scratch my itch be making ready. And of the grand provost, turned to Farfarero, who rolled his eyes about as if to strike, said, Stand aside there, thou malicious bird. If you desire either to see or hear, the terror-stricken recommence thereon. Tuscans or Lombards, I will make them come, but let the Malebranche cease a little, so that these may not their revenges fear. And I, down sitting in this very place, for one that I am will make 7 to come. When I shall whistle, as our custom is, to do whenever one of us emerges, Cagnazo, at these words his muzzle lifted, shaking his head, and said, Just hear the trick which he has thought of, down to throw himself. Whence he who snares in great abundance had, responded, I by far too cunning am, when I procure for mine a greater sadness. Alican held not in, but running counter unto the rest, said to him, If thou dive, I will not follow thee upon the gallop, but I will beat my wings above the pitch, the height be left, and be the bank a shield, to see if thou alone dost countervail us. O thou who readest, thou shalt hear new sport, each to the other side his eyes averted. He first, who most reluctant was to do it. Then Avarisi selected well his time, planted his feet on land, and in a moment leaped, and released himself from their design, whereat each one was suddenly stung with shame. But he most who was cause of the defeat, therefore he moved and cried, Thou art o'ertaken. But little it availed, for wings could not outstrip the fear. The other one went under, and, flying, upward he beat his breast directed. Not otherwise the duck upon a sudden dives under, when the falcon is approaching, and upward he returneth cross and weary. Infuriate at the mockery, Calcabrina, flying behind him, followed close, desirous the other should escape, to have a quarrel. And when the Beardor had disappeared, he turned his talons upon his companion, and grappled with him right above the moat. But sooth the other was a doughty sparhawk, to clapper claw him well, and both of them fell in the middle of the boiling pond. A sudden intercessor was the heat, but ne'er the less of rising was there not. To such a degree they had their wings belimed. Lamenting with the others, Babaricha made 4 of them fly to the other side with all their gaffs, and very speedily this side and that they to their posts descended. They stretched their hooks toward the pitch ensnared, who were already baked within the crust, and in this manner busied did we leave them.